second of the cooking virtual gatherings for sustainability and resilience. We're really lucky to have our culinary team partnering with our sustainability team to put these gatherings together. And today's topic is about simple cooking, soups, stews, and slow cooking. And the way that we'll do this is that we'll have everybody muted during the session except for the chefs, and use the chat box to submit any questions, and we'll ask them while they're sharing information, and then we will have some time at the end for additional questions. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chef Tony and Chef Bob.
Hey guys. So today with the stews and soups and slow cooking, I am going to make a cioppino. Not a absolute classic cioppino, but really you could be making bouillabaisse, you could be making the catupiry from Portugal, but pretty much it's a seafood stew with some aromatics and mainly tomato and some broth, and then with a plethora of different types of seafoods. Really simple, and I'm going to do that in my Dutch oven here that I brought in from home.
Cool. Hi everybody. So I got a couple of recipes for you. Tony's got the stew covered, so I'm making a soup and something that's kind of slow cooked. For a soup, I'm making a very simple potato leek soup. Very classic, and is a really good soup for kind of year-round cooking. In the summertime, you can serve it chilled. It's called a vichyssoise. In the wintertime, you add some bacon to make it a little richer. But in the spring, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit and add some vegetables at the end too. I'm also making a traditional bolognese, which takes a little bit of time to cook, as a lot of slow cooking does. So I've done a couple of steps ahead of time just to kind of speed up the process here. But for the soup, at least, I'm going to start. Get a pot on here. I've already got a little bit of butter in there. And I'm going to add about 1 inch of olive oil. Okay. And then we got some leeks. Leeks are great, again, for a year-round vegetable. They grow in the summer and late in the fall, even after the first frost or after it snows, you can still pull them off the ground. So I've cut some up here. Gave them a really good wash because they tend to be dirty inside. I also have some sliced onions and garlic in here too. So we're going to start by putting the leeks, onions, and garlics in here. Okay. And what we want to do for this is we want to avoid any kind of caramelization or any browning on it. So we'll do it over fairly low heat. We're going to add a good pinch of salt, which is going to help draw out the moisture from the leeks and the onions, so pull the water out of them, so it'll again help keep it from browning as you're cooking. If you end up browning it when you go to finish your soup and puree it, you have kind of an off-white color, it'll be more obviously brown color. So nice clean white color is nice for the soup. So I'm just gonna let those kind of sit and slowly cook. And then start on some bolognese here, and then we'll scoot over to Tony. So for the bolognese, is a traditional Italian ragu for pasta. I've browned some meat first. This is about half pork, half beef. Okay, I caramelize it in a pan to get a little bit of color to it. What this does is you can easily make a bolognese in a slow cooker. And throw kind of everything in there and let it cook for a couple hours, and you're going to get a really good product. As a chef, what we do is we build flavors. So browning the meat, caramelization adds a flavor to it. We have some bacon here that's already cooked off. You can also traditionally use pancetta. Bacon is a little easier to find. But to start here, I did save a little bit of meat to brown and show you the process. So over fairly high heat without setting off the fire alarm here in New Hampshire. We're gonna get this hot and add some of the ground beef, ground pork, and kind of break it up a little bit. Once you break it up a little bit, you just want to let it cook. That's what you need the browning on the bottom of the pan there. As this goes, you can see over to the Tony that we just started there. So, exactly like Bob, here, exactly about making flavors, really great about stews or soup. And almost all of them will start with what we call a chouette. And that's generally a sweat of aromatics, so garlic, ginger, lemongrass, anything that's pungent like that on the plate, right? So what I'm going to do is add our garlic here. Got a little bit of olive oil, and then I've got medium olive here. And I've got some onions. And I know, Brandy, if you're watching this, I know your affinity for onions, so I'm just going to add a little extra onions in here. I add a lot of onions. And probably one of the most underutilized vegetables is fennel. This has a really great meat flavor. You can start seeing our stew here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do at this stage is add a little bit of extra salt. And then this helps draw out the moisture, also the flavor of our aromatics here. So I'm just going to lightly sweat it. And Marlene can tell you.
Talk a little bit louder. Can you guys talk a little bit louder? It's a little bit hard to hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, well, I can definitely do that.
Yell at Marlene.
Well, she wasn't laughing at my pitch or too fun, so. But anyways, so I've got our aromatics going in here, and I added a little bit of salt, which is going to help draw out the moisture, which means it's going to pull out that flavor, actually season or flavor our oil that we have here. So this will take a second, and then, I don't know if you got anything going on?
Come on over here. So as you can see in this pot, Tony's talking about sweating. That's what we're doing to the onions and leeks in here. We want to very slowly cook it. Basically, the longer and slower you cook it, the sweeter the onions are going to get, and the more tender. So we'll give that a few more minutes on low heat for it to be sweating. And then for the bolognese, you can see now that the meat is brown, okay, and there's some good stuff in the bottom of the pan. You want to keep that in the pan. You just sweep out the meat for that. In French terms, it's called fond. It's kind of the building block of a lot of good braising and slow cooking. So now that I've taken the meat out, next I would normally add bacon and let that render until it's crispy and take that out. Since I've done that, we're going to skip ahead and heat back on. Now we're going to add our vegetables, which is mirepoix. So it's carrots, onions, and celery with a little bit of garlic in there too. And this is just cooking in some of the grease from the cooking the beef before. So we're going to season that too. Salt and pepper. Turn up the heat. On this, you can get a little bit of color in the vegetables, fine, without going too full on caramelization. So our leeks and onions look nice and tender now, right? We're going to add to this potatoes. And these are russet potatoes. You can pretty much use any kind of white potato. Red is really the only one you don't want to use. You can also use sweet potatoes, like a sweet potato. So if you want a richer, heartier soup, your ratio of potatoes is going to go up. Your ratio of leeks and onions go down. If you're looking for something a little lighter, add more onions and more leeks and more left. So that's going to go in there. We're going to add vegetable stock. just enough to cover the vegetables. We're going to add one little splash of white wine. And we're going to add a splash of heavy cream. Just a splash. Okay, now we can turn up the heat. Get that going. Perfect. All right. And then I've got over here, as you can see, if you can take a look. So the onions and garlic are sweated, and they're slightly translucent now. And again, Marlene can tell you, it just smells fantastic. And what this does is it really does perfume our stew or feast or our sauce. So this is almost always how a really good sauce to start, is done with this. Now the next step, since onions tend to be fairly sweet, we're going to add a acidic component to it, and that is going to be some white wine. Okay, and we obviously have to be careful, especially over open heat with that. And then what we're going to do is reduce that white wine to what we call is offset, which is almost dry. And the point of that is now we're trying to use concentrate flavor. Okay. And that's just going to take a second to come down. And then afterwards, then we're going to add our other components. So if we have sweet, acidic, we're going to add then savory, and then umami. And then we're going to finish off with some herbs. So you can see how it's a balance of flavor that really makes stews and soup to taste so fantastic.
Chef Tony?
Yep.
You had mentioned that fennel is underutilized. Can you talk a little bit about what that flavor is and what it adds to it? And it also, it seems like when we are able to get a little bit closer to the chefs, you're coming in more clear. And when you go a little further away, I think that the simmering of the pots and pans might be making it a little bit harder for us to hear you.
Okay, yeah. So with those ingredients that you don't see in the store too often, so as Chef Bob has his leeks there, I've got fennel here. I mean, everybody knows celery and carrots and things like that, but definitely in French cooking, definitely in French provincial cooking, you know, these are really, really staples, which I think just can really add to your dishes, and especially with something like fennel, where it has a really pleasant and nice flavor to it, can just really add. So when people are tasting things, like, oh yeah, that tastes great. I wonder what that flavor is. And often it's something like fennel or leeks or parsnips that is just not an everyday onion or potato, that it can really add some really, really great flavor to a stew, especially when you have cream or fats. That flavor is just picked up so much better. And then with that richness, with that bitterness and savoriness, you can have something really, really delightful, especially a vichyssoise or the potato soup there. So, all right. So then what we've got here is you can see how it is coming down, and it's almost dry. So what I'm going to do now is add, again, another savory component. So I'm going to add the broth from clams. Now you can use fish stock, you can use chicken stock, but really the whole point is to add savoriness, and that's what those stocks actually will do. And then later on we'll get to umami, a little bit of acid, and then again with a little bit of savory, and then with some beautiful floral saffron, which I have here.
All right, so all the good smells that Marlene is smelling is actually coming from my area, not his area. So what we have in our bolognese, you can see that the vegetables have caramelized lightly. And again, the bottom of the pan is getting a little brown, which is good. Now we're going to add tomato paste, which we talked about last week. Okay, tomato paste is that really, really rich, concentrated tomato flavor. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn up my heat because I want my tomato paste to actually caramelize a little bit, which is basically browning or getting dark, almost a black color on the bottom of the pan. And again, that's where your Tony's talking about building flavors using sweet and sour, bittering, umami, savory. Caramelization adds a lot of sweetness. It adds some bitterness. It adds that umami from the tomatoes. So you can see the bottom of the pan there is starting to brown from the tomato paste. Kind of stirring this. Once you start to see dark brown and a little bit of black, it's probably good. It's caramelized. Now we're going to add basically everything in here to get it cooking. Our ground meats. Our bacon that's already been cooked. And then the liquid to cook it. We have some white wine. We have some water. Stock is fine too. And some milk. Milk might seem a little odd. And it will break as you put it in. It'll kind of curdle a little bit. But as the sauce cooks down and reduces, it actually comes together really nice. It's a lot better than adding a heavy cream.
Heavy cream wouldn't hurt you.
No, it wouldn't hurt, but it's almost too rich. Right? A little more water. Okay, and now is the point. If you get this, if you wanted to throw it in your slow cooker, and basically set it on low for 2 or 3 hours, you'd come back and have a really nice bolognese. On the stove top, I'm going to set it to kind of a low-medium heat. And it really should simmer for more than an hour, more time than we have. We'll see kind of how far it gets along as we go through the process. And the soup is simmering away right now. It's still got a little bit of time. So I'm going to step away and go take a break.
You need a break?
I'll need to be here for a while.
So what I've done is I've actually added some bay leaves to the stew, and the whole point of that is it's going to add a really nice kind of grassy note. So you can see how we're using all these little tools to make our stew really rich and flavorful. Now what I'm going to do is take the world's most expensive spice, and you really only need a pinch. Okay. And saffron comes from Spain. It's these beautiful purple flowers with these yellow stamens, and then they turn red as they dry. Okay. And it's one of the main components in paella, along with many Spanish stews. So just a little bit goes a long way. It is very expensive because they actually have to handpick these stamens. If you ever look at photographs of Spain when they're actually doing it, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So this is something definitely on the bucket list for me, is to go to Spain and see how they do that, along with trying Iberico ham, which they're also world famous for. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our acidic and umami component, and I'm going to add some diced tomatoes with its own juice. And just a little bit more. And to bolster that umami flavor, but also to help thicken the stew, I'm going to add some tomato paste as well. And if you're noticing, I'm measuring everything very exactly. So don't ask me for the recipe. But yeah, and then one of the world's greatest ingredients, honestly, is just a small squeeze of lemon. Just the flowing with and just the acidic component that just a little bit of lemon juice can bring to dishes. Even for something like a bolognese, I might squeeze a little bit of lemon right at the end, along with the Parmesan. It's what, again, like one of these secret ingredients where people are like, wow, this is really good. What's that extra flavor? And a lot of times it's something simple. It's just a little bit of lemon. Now, obviously, lemon goes with seafood, so it's not a major revelation in this particular dish. But really, even in like a pesto, just a little bit of lemon at the end can make a huge, huge difference. All right, so I'm just gonna add just a little bit of salt here, the black pepper. What we're doing is just seasoning the broth right now. And I think Marlene can tell you, like from each component, I think you're getting that really fragrant at the beginning, and now a little bit acidic and a little bit of sweet. And then what I'm going to do kind of at the last minute, once this reduces down a little bit, I'm going to add the seafood. And the seafood's not going to take that long. Really, I could probably put all that seafood in here and then shut off the heat, just so it kind of poaches in this broth here. But that's going to take another minute or two. So I don't know. Chef
Yeah, we
Bob's
can
got
check
any-
in over here. So our soup is still simmering away. The liquid's reducing down a little bit. So add just another little bit of vegetable stock. But what you don't want to do is add too much stock. When you go to puree your soup, it'll be too thin. Or if you leave some of the liquid out, you're basically leaving out a lot of flavor left behind. The other important thing, we'll give it a little taste just to see where the flavor is at. It needs just a pinch of salt. And it's important to season as you go, as opposed to making the entire soup and then tasting the season. You want to build your flavors. You want to season as you go every step of the way. And then to basically tell when this is done, I'm going to just take a potato and kind of break it in half. And they're still a little firm, so it's probably got another five minutes or so to cook. You can see our bolognese over here, which the sauce now has come together. Okay, it actually looks like a bolognese right now. If we taste this, it's still going to be very different flavors. You're gonna taste the wine. You're gonna taste kind of the water. The flavors really haven't developed yet. As it reduces down and cooks, the flavors kind of develop.
Bob, why didn't you tell them where bolognese is from? You think that some of them.
Where's that from?
France? Japan?
Basically mid-central, mid-northern Italy, Emilia-Romagna is kind of very well known for bolognese. I think if you talk to 100 different Italians, you're going to get 100 different recipes. This is the recipe that I've been cooking basically for a decade or two. When I worked at an Italian restaurant 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. Milk seems like an odd ingredient, but I've read a lot of old cookbooks from Italian cooking, and it actually is very traditionally used there.
Just it adds a little bit of richness without creating it.
Correct.
So it's not like a wash sauce or something.
So I'm going to season this a bit more. It needs just a pinch more salt and pepper. As the liquid reduces down, the flavor is going to concentrate. So if it already tastes seasoned right now, you definitely don't want to add any more by the end product. It might actually be salty. So you want to be careful seasoning something that's going to cook for a long period of time. And as it cooks down, the flavor is going to develop. Your liquid's going to reduce. And you might end up with a saltiness if you season too heavily to start. You got any questions coming through yet?
Yep, Chef Bob, if you had like a bigger piece of meat or wanted to buy a less expensive cut, like a roast,
Yep.
could you prepare that dish with that? And how would you do it?
Sure, that's basically like an Italian ragu. Ragu is made with more whole chunks of meat, like stew beef kind of thing, but done in the same way. So you're going to start with the same ingredients, the same flavors. You're going to brown your meat, your chunks, right? And then you're going to throw everything in there and let it slowly cook, basically until that stew beef or whatever you're using kind of breaks down and starts to shred a little bit without going too far. If you cook that too far, you're going to end up with just very finely shredded beef in a sense. So you want to cook that until it just starts to kind of fall apart, which could be anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 hours or so.
All right, so do you want to come in, Marlene? So you can see our broth is starting to reduce, and so one of the good things about this, and when you take a look at it, you're going to see these bubbles breaking, but yet it's going to sound fairly thick, and you're going to notice that things are going to reduce down, and that's actually a really good thing, is because it's going to concentrate the flavor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some parsley now. I didn't want to add it too early, and I'm going to add some more at the end, but really, I want to be able to get this Italian parsley to really perfume the stew here. So I'm kind of hedging my bet. I'm adding some now, and then I'll add some later on for garnish as well. And the reason why you want this to be fairly thick is because much of the seafood obviously has a good amount of moisture and saltiness to it. So later on, we're going to taste it and make sure that's not over salted. So as you've seen, I think I've only salted it in that very, very beginning with the sweat to help draw out that moisture. Okay. And then what I've done as well is probably one of the best things about the stew is dipping bread into it. So I've got a little.
It looked like you'd have enough bread there, honestly.
Well, I could have done more. And you know what, one of the great breads of the world is a baguette. So I've got a baguette for this. And if you really want to take it up a notch, you could actually grill it. That's probably one of the best ways to actually have it with the cioppino or bouillabaisse or the cotapana here. So what I'm going to do now is just going to add the clams. Because those are going to take the longest to cook. Just going to add those guys right in there. And then I'm going to give those guys a head start. Then I'm going to add the fish, the shrimp, and the scallops. And pretty much all I have to do is put the lid on and cover it. Let it sit for about 10 minutes or so. There'll be enough residual heat. But the mussels need about 5 minutes. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put the lid on it for just a couple minutes here. Now I'll finish it up with the seafood at the very end, along with maybe another squeeze of lemon and some fresh parsley.
Chef Tony,
Yes.
what kind of fish do you recommend using?
So these recipes aren't hard and true ones. So if you think about the coast in Europe or even in the United States, so Cape Cod, it's pretty much when you go down to the fish market, it's whatever they pretty much have is what you want to use. Now, there's certain ones that you might want to avoid, like salmon, because it's really oily and it has its own particular flavor that might not balance so great with tomato, but pretty much any whitefish, clams, shellfish, shrimp, whatever they happen to have at the market is probably the fish that you want to use because it's the freshest, it's the most local, it's probably the most sustainable. So it doesn't have to be scallops, and it doesn't have to be shrimp. But if they happen to be there, and especially if you're on Cape Cod or you're in New Bedford, they're going to have beautiful scallops. And those are the items that you should use. They're going to have beautiful flounder, and that's the fish that should go into this dish. But as kind of a rule, with tomato, generally you don't want something oily, like we'll call it like a sardine or eel or salmon, that you want more whitefish. Now, that's not to say those fish don't pair well with other dishes, which they do, like a teriyaki salmon or a teriyaki eel is like fantastic. It's just great for what it is for that, but it might not be the best for tomato, saffron type of broth. But really, in lieu of that, pretty much whatever's local. I mean, I remember going to Rhode Island as a kid and picking clams off of the, not clams, I'm sorry, snails off the jetty. Even that would be great in here. You know, so whatever's at your market is pretty much what you want to use, except for those really oily type of dishes like shark. Not that you want shark anyways, but you know, like eel or salmon or things like that. All right, so do you have anything, or otherwise I'll pop in the seafood here.
So I'm gonna show you the soup here. The potatoes are now nice and tender. I just broke one right in half. So I'm gonna puree this while you're doing seafood.
All right, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay. All right. So if you take a look, our broth has just thinned out just a little bit here, but the clams have opened. I mean, does it smell good, Marlene?
It smells delicious.
All right. And what we're going to do is we're just going to shut off the heat. And one of the great things about a Dutch oven, it really doesn't give up its heat very well, which you would think, you know, that's a bad thing because we're always told like stainless steel heats up really quickly. It gets really hot. But traditionally, you used to do this over coals. And actually, if you got that much heat into your pan, you just scorch everything, burn it. So just understanding your pot or your saute pan or your cast iron pan, that if you know its properties, you can use it to its fullest. So making cornbread in here makes perfect sense compared to a high temperature stainless steel from All-Clad or one of those companies. So okay, so the cod is in here. Add our shrimp. I'm going to add our beautiful scallops here. And our clams. Now, this, one of the things I was talking about was that I couldn't find any whole clams. So I had to use chopped clams. But again, it's one of these things that we just have to be resourceful at this time because of what is at the store. And I've noticed there's certain items that I've always counted on for Whole Foods to have, but they don't. So one of the things about a recipe like this is no recipe per se, and pretty much you can use anything that happens to be available. All right. So I just turned on the heat just a little bit here. What I want to do is just make sure that the simmer comes back, and then pretty much it's pretty simple from here. All you have to do is turn it off and just wait for about 10 minutes, and then that seafood will kind of soft poach in the stew all by itself. I think Bob is back from his coffee break.
So I pureed the soup. Looks nice and creamy. Drop it right back in the pot here. You want to be very careful if you're pureeing a hot soup in the blender, because the heat when you turn on the blender will blow the top off. So you let either the soup cool first, or you're very careful and start on low. I'm going to reheat this a little bit, and I'm going to season it and taste it. The bolognese over here, I'm going to continue to slow cook in. If you, Tony was talking about Parmesan, and a lot of times if you buy a really good Parmesan, you have the rind there, which you don't end up using, you throw it out. So if you take that Parmesan rind and drop it in here during the whole cooking time, it's going to infuse that kind of Parmesan flavor into it, and then you're going to use enough basically a food scrap that you otherwise throw out. If you go into Whole Foods these days, they actually sell the Parmesan rind separately from the Parmesan. I was like, oh, that's genius. $8 a pound for taking the rind away.
Bob, we've got a question for you.
Sure.
So you're using milk for the sauce. For richness, should you use whole or low-fat milk?
So you can, you just need more of it. You need a certain amount of basically that dairy richness into the sauce. So whether it's just a splash of heavy cream or a good amount of whole milk, or if you use a low-fat milk, you're just going to want to use more of it. And you'll end up seeing, right when you pour it in, again, from the acid that I put in there from the white wine, will basically curdle the milk, which is okay to do in this regard. Because as you can see, as when I put in the milk, it curdled right away, and as it's cooked down, it actually is really creamy right now. So you can use a lower fat milk, but I'd recommend whole milk for this. So now our soup, I'm going to taste it before I serve it. That's the most important thing to do, right? Taste your food. And add just another little pinch of salt. Okay. And actually, I'm going to add a little bit of fresh thyme. Kind of perfume.
So if you find that your food is a little bit too salty, like if it's cooked down and it's gotten a little too salty, or if you add just a little bit more than you wanted to, is there a way to self-correct that?
So that's one of the hardest things to correct. So if this is too salty right now, I'm basically going to have to thin it out with water to kind of balance out that saltiness. or adding other components to it. What I've done today to make it a little healthier, I got some roasted cauliflower, okay, but unfortunately I already seasoned that too. And I got some sauteed kale, which I already seasoned. So if it wasn't seasoned, adding those as kind of a plain ingredient would help balance that soup.
You could also add a little bit of fat to it. A little bit.
Fat would help, for
olive
sure.
oil, maybe a little bit more cream, butter, because what happens is that fat coats your palate.
Yep.
So the salt can't get to your taste buds as well. So you perceive like there's less salt. Or just a pinch of sugar.
So I chose cauliflower and kale today, but really you could add like a roasted butternut squash. You could add some cooked lentils to it. You could add fresh herbs like chives or scallions. You could add asparagus, peas for springtime. Really just taking that base potato leek soup and going any direction throughout the summer. So you got a nice, really creamy soup. Even though there was a pinch of butter and a splash of cream, a lot of vegetables to it. Everybody loves kale, right?
It's what's trending.
Okay, there's that. Bolognese is continue to slow cook. We got another couple hours here, but
So I mean that's a perfect story about the Sunday ragu. The longer it's almost like sugar. Just develops its complexity and reacts with the heat reduction. So let's take a look. Let's see if our seafood is all set. And generally, most seafoods, as long as it's not a huge portion, it takes about 10 minutes. It's almost like an egg. So if you're going to make ricotta or what have you, 10 to 13 minutes or so is generally ideal. So let's take a look.
get in here close so they can smell it. I'm sorry, you can't smell it.
That's too bad. It smells great. So actually what I've done is when Bob was cooking, I actually did taste it, and surprisingly it's very well seasoned, and partially that's from the juice from the clam. So it's really important for a dish like this to be really careful with the salt, because there's so much salt in that broth and in the seafood in general. So
When those mussels, when they open up, basically release a lot of juice, which is already very, very seasoned.
correct, exactly. Yeah. So it almost really seasons itself, You can see all we've done is some aromatics, some tomatoes, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of lemon juice. And you guys can kind of see how good that looks.
You have a cast iron Dutch oven. Would you do anything different?
You know what? So I did cook it in a cast iron Dutch oven that's enamel glazed. So pretty much the reason why I love Dutch ovens is generally they'll produce a really beautiful fond. So something that Bob was talking about earlier, all the little tidbits that are in the bottom of the pan when you're sauteing things adhere really well to the cast iron. And also, like I said earlier previously, is that things really don't burn in cast iron. Yes, if you take it, all the way on high for 10 minutes, yeah, you can blacken pretty much anything, but it really caramelizes things really, really well because it doesn't hit it with so much heat that it blackens. And that caramelization can add a ton of flavor. So,
but you do want to be careful with cast irons, doing a lot of acid, the lemon juice, the white wine. So if you had a traditional cast iron Dutch oven, I might not recommend it for a stew like that, but it would work great for a bolognese. It's that acid from the liquid that can react with the cast iron.
correct. And sometimes that's a good thing when if you need a boost in iron, so you're kind of deficient in iron. So sauteing spinach in a cast iron pan is actually really great. With this particular one, this is why they're enameled, and this is a very French type of Dutch oven here, is so that because of that glass, then it doesn't react with the iron and all the other minerals or elements in there. So this is our stew here.
It's great.
Actually, I think looks pretty good here. As simple as that. And if you wanted to just top it off with just a little bit of olive oil there. And that's our cioppino. And this is something Marlene would appreciate. It was invented in San Francisco, pretty much stolen from fruit de mer recipe out of Italy. But yeah, very simple, very hearty. You could serve this with rice, you could serve it with pasta, you could have it with bread like I had it here. And it's just very simple, very tasty, very easy.
So I don't have too much else here. The bolognese is continuing to cook. But what I would do if after another probably half an hour to an hour, if it continues to cook down and you're losing a lot of sauce, you're just going to add a little bit more broth or water to kind of thin it out and let it continue to cook. But to finish it, I love fresh thyme. A pinch of that in there. Okay. Parmesan cheese, you can do some fresh grated Parmesan in there, or you can save that as you toss the sauce with your pasta, and then finish the top of that with Parmesan cheese as well. But that's pretty much a traditional bolognese there, ragu, that you can kind of do many different ways, but it's a simple or what I call a simple recipe that you could do in a slow cooker as well if you wanted to. Any questions coming through, Kathy?
So what would you serve that with? Pasta, rice, bread, any of those, all of those?
So traditionally it's with pasta, a longer noodle or a thicker noodle like a pappardelle. But any type of pasta would be very good. If you have a leftover sauce, serving it as like a bruschetta, taking a nice baguette, brushing it with olive oil, putting that ragu on there, a little cheese, and baking it in the oven would be delicious as well. At home, I usually make a pretty good sized pot, so a little bit more than this, and then I'll bag it and freeze it. I'll make enough for a few dinners at a time because it actually freezes very, very well.
Great. Any other questions, folks? Keep them coming.
Otherwise, we're going to start eating here.
Nice.
Always.
Yeah, we've got time. So are there any other kind of variations that you would recommend to these? And I have another question about is there a difference between bouillabaisse and the dish that you made, Tony?
Yeah, so it's just I guess every great cuisine, I guess, has a seafood stew. And because bouillabaisse is from France, generally it's provincial France, so in the south of France, it's very close to Italy. And the flavors are very similar between the two, I guess, regions. So with that, they are similar. And again, even though I've added saffron to this, which a true cioppino doesn't have, it's more in line with what we consider bouillabaisse. But the differences are really small. But as long as
you see the ingredients of the region.
Right, exactly. And it's using that local component. So even though we're in Massachusetts, it's a cioppino from San Francisco. I could make it with, again, like I said, flounder and lobster. Yeah, lobster, and what have you, and call it, New England seafood stew or Manhattan New England chowder or something, along those lines. But it's based in something that is very traditional, and the reason why it is traditional is because it tastes great. That's why it's a classic. That's why we still eat it after hundreds of years of tomatoes being, found in the New World here. But yeah, I mean, you could do variations of this. It doesn't necessarily have to be seafood. I mean, a broth like this would work with chicken. Like you could get a really nice poulet of chicken from the grocery store, and even though it kind of might look like a cacciatore, it would still taste very similar. And you could put it over pasta. You could pork would be okay in it, but probably probably beef and tomatoes makes a little bit more sense than pork. So really, if you're looking at it as a base, that's probably the best way to look at it. And if you don't like mussels, don't add mussels. And if you do like lobster, add a ton of lobster. Then and you can make it your own as long as you understand that the foundation of the aromatics and the acid and the stock and the savoriness and how you're building those flavors. And even if I want to add a little bit of milk, a little bit of thyme, a little bit of butter, maybe just a smidge of sugar to balance all those flavors together, well, then I can do that as well, as long as you understand what's foundational and then what you can do as preference.
Is there an order of adding those that you should always follow? Like, would you ever add the like the citrus or something like that, the acid somewhere? Would there be a wrong time to add that?
Correct. I mean, that's a really great question, because the reason why we do things in this order, and you've seen with Bob, with the soup and the stew, that we started with aromatics first because we really want to pull out that flavor, and that can hold up to that type of cooking. And then again with the acids that follow, and then we want to reduce. So if we add things a little bit too early, as you mentioned, lemon juice is great, but when you kind of cook it for a long time, you lose a lot of the fresh essence to the simmering process. But also, you can add a certain amount of bitterness that you might not want as well. So there's a logical step of how Bob made his recipes for myself because of that optimization of those ingredients. Because if you add the garlic at the end, it might be too pungent, it might be too give you some heartburn. And there's a reason why that went in first, followed by the stock, which we need to reduce, followed by the tomatoes, which can hold up to that simmering, and then the herbs kind of at the end, and then the last minute garnishes. So even though it might not seem like there's a prescribed sequence, there actually is.
You basically always want to, if you're cooking with wine, that's one of the first liquids that you're going to add. So with this, the bolognese or with that, you add wine, you kind of deglaze, it's called deglaze your pan, which is collecting all those little bits and browning that had formed on the pan, and then letting that reduce down to kind of concentrate that flavor. If you add a good splash of white wine to that right now, the acidity in that's going to overpower it too much. It doesn't have time to kind of cook it and blend. Whereas the lemon juice, a little squeeze right at the end, kind of finishes the dish.
And then again, with the actual alcohol, we want to remove that alcohol, so that's why you put it in the beginning as well. Now, that's not to say this wouldn't go great with really, really cold Pinot Grigio, because it would. And that's something else that we should actually talk about. When you are having beverages with your food, there is a strong relationship between being able to taste flavors in the presence of alcohol. So that's why a lot of times you'll have a glass of wine or a particular type of beer, but also we'll cook with things that don't have flavor but have alcohol. So if you ever wonder why they have vodka sauces, that's exactly why. It's because in the presence of alcohol, you can perceive certain flavors more readily. And then obviously if you're drinking with it, then it's another component flavor. So a really nice Pinot Grigio with the nice acidity, the oakiness, the refreshingness of that would pair really well with tomatoes and a little bit of heat and seafood. And a huge Bordeaux, big old Bordeaux tastes great with a Sunday ragu.
Or you go Italian.
Well, okay, you could go, okay, so Montepulciano, Chianti, those flavors just really pair well with the beverages. If you're over 20.
Any other questions, folks? These were all really great questions, and one of the things I really appreciated is talking about how you can kind of work with what you have, right? So it doesn't have to be just one thing. It could be you could make it your own with whatever you have available. So thank you for talking about those variations. Anything else that you want to add before, and anything that you should not do for these dishes?
There's a lot that can go wrong.
There's raw, yeah.
I mean, probably for this dish, just make sure the seafood is fresh. That is the most important issue.
Okay.
That it's fresh. I mean, vegetables are really important that they're fresh, but if you have one mussel that's dead, it will ruin the whole stew. So that's probably the most important thing. Just really fresh seafood, or if you want to play safe, frozen seafood also works.
For the soup, anytime you're cooking a soup, especially with dairy in it, if you scorch it, you might as well just start over. Any kind of scorched dairy, if you've ever tasted it, it perfumes the entire dish that it's in. It's basically unsavable at that point. Pretty much everything else a chef can save in some way or another. But scorched, like I remember days of tasting clam chowder that the cooks had scorched, and you can walk by the top and you can smell it, and it's not savable at that point, unfortunately.
It's kind of like a burnt pie, you know, like
Yeah,
a burnt apple pie.
Nothing you can do. The dog may not even do it.
No, honestly, it's the compost thing.
Great.
Well,
Well,